Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Knife and gun crime in this country and acid attacks across the United Kingdom are on the rise. There were over 34,000 knife incidents alone last year. Only this week, two 15-year-old gang members from Hendon in London were given life sentences for killing another teenager. They were apparently seeking revenge. Channel 4 News has been given access to the trauma ward of one of just 4 major trauma centres in London, St George's in South London, to observe doctors working on the front line alongside youth workers to interrupt the cycle of violence. A warning, there are some graphic scenes from the trauma ward in Simeon Brown's report.
Hello, St George's. Hello, is that Radio Trauma?
Every day, trauma wards witness an epidemic of knife and gun violence.
So if we're alerted by the London Ambulance Service that they're bringing in a stabbed victim, we'll have between 8 and 10 people waiting for that patient to come in.
The NHS is under pressure from older patients, but occupying beds in increasing numbers are young victims of weapons.
It's not rare to see it on about every shift that we come into, that somebody will have been stabbed.
What we are going to do is get an X-ray done first.
Channel 4 News was given unrestricted access to witness the public health impact.
Which direction do they go into the sea?
This young man is barely 20. We know he was attacked by 2 men, but he's reluctant to give details on why. The staff are now trying to stem the bleeding. There is concern the wound may be deeper than thought.
There's actively.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Every drop of blood lost increases the risk of death. But even if stab victims survive, there can be long-term injuries.
He seems stable.
With no one this victim knows by his bedside, the friendly face comes from Becky.
We're just here to kind of see what's best for you and what's going to kind of be most useful for you at the moment. I imagine I'm in a bit of a shock right now. Yeah, you're here. Would have been a lot worse. Sure.
Becky is not a doctor or a policewoman. She's a youth worker.
We embed youth workers into the A&E departments of the major trauma centres in London, and that is to meet with young people who are at risk of or have experienced serious youth violence. So they're expecting to come and get healthcare, which they get, and then the team will kind of step in and alongside that. They're more susceptible and more open to kind of not only change in their life, if indeed that might need to happen, but also the concept of support and kind of working with that support. And then we're looking at their risk and safety and actually what is that going to look like when that young person leaves this hospital in light of what's happened to bring them here.
When you've got a wound here, it not necessarily be that the inside structures, you have to focus just that it could have gone like that, could have gone in any direction, which we don't know by just looking at the wound. So it's better to screen everything in that region and around that region to make sure that nothing's damaged.
Whilst the stabbing victim undergoes his scan, Becky has to see a young victim of a gun attack. On this ward is a young man who's been shot, and the Met's gangs unit have paid him a visit, but like so many of the young men who come here, he's refusing to talk to them. But he will talk to Becky. The young man, who we cannot identify, is in his early 20s and now has life-changing injuries. Yet last year there were over 6,000 gun offences. That's an astonishing rise of 23%. Becky's not the only one on the ward waiting to see him.
Some of the officers from Trident are here to speak with you.
I mean, I'm not taking nobody to court. I'm letting you know now. I'm not going to take, because I don't know anything anyway, so I can't do that anyway. You know what I'm trying to say? But why do the police want to talk to me?
That feels frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Like, why do you want to talk to me? You just want to talk to me to what?
All right. The police wanting to talk to you is to bring someone to justice. Someone has done this to you. All right. So part of the police's role is to investigate that, and the second part is to keep the public safe. All right. Is to prevent that from happening to somebody.
See, I understand. I understand you, but I don't know anything. So my side of the story ain't gonna really help anything because I haven't seen no one. You know what I mean? I didn't see anything.
Okay.
On the streets, justice is not settled via the courts. And that's the part of the cycle Becky is trying to interrupt.
It's not my role to investigate. It's not my role to investigate that. It's my role to support and enable that young person.
Keep your arms inside.
I can't find a solution for all of them. I'm not going to save their lives. The medics have done that. What I put into them, what my team put into them, is knowing that, you know, we're going to walk along with them for those next steps, if indeed they, you know, they're kind of willing to take that.
We are used to the police dealing with knife violence as a criminal justice issue, but on this ward, Becky's charity Red Thread are tackling it as a public health crisis. Every encounter Becky makes matters. If she has to fight a domino effect of young men returning home intent on inflicting the very harm they've suffered.
Their friends come to visit them, and you hear snippets of their conversations, and it's about getting back at whoever did this, and it seems like a cycle that they can't seem to break. That's the sad thing about it, is that there is just a lot of anger that they can't seem to handle and can't seem to get beyond.
Still bleeding?
Yeah. After his scan, the earlier stab victim returns to resus. The staff are calm. They've had far too much practice. St George's is one of just 4 major trauma centres in London, facing over 1,000 stabbings a month.
Lucky man. So it's going to feel a bit weird because where you've got the numbing stuff in at the moment.
Had the weapon entered his body just centimetres closer to his chest, he could have died.
But they're just washing it basically now.
Instead, he could return home as early as tomorrow.
Wanting to let everybody know that you're here. Morning. How are you doing? You're standing.
But before he does, Becky is keen to speak with him to prevent the violence from escalating.
So if you were to see them again and realise that you recognise them, what do you think you would do? I know that's a theoretical question, but it's an important one to kind of have some thought about, because it might happen, right? I'm assuming you weren't planning on seeing them yesterday. How are you going to ensure that happens?
Just get on my stuff, get a job, you know, get out there.
Okay, so if I can offer to you that I'm willing, myself, my team, or whatever, we can help you out a bit with getting that job and getting you sorted with that. Would that be useful?
Yeah.
It's now home time for this young man. I asked him to call us when he's fit, but he has no fixed address, he has few options, and he's one of thousands of young men this year to be caught in violence. The people trying to keep them alive are doing their best, but they know that patching them up is the easy part.
Adult male trauma, 15 minutes.
Well, I'm joined now by Sheldon Thomas, the founder of Gangs Line, by Colin Sutton, a former Metropolitan Police officer, and from Birmingham by Decima Francis of the Boyhood to Manhood Foundation. Sheldon Thomas, in some ways, a profoundly depressing film. Here are doctors and nurses keeping these young people alive, but you wonder, what is their life like when they get out of the hospital? What's going to happen next?
Well, what normally happens is that nothing really changes for them. I mean, these young men are very good at telling you what you want to hear, and when they come out, it's a different ball game altogether, because for them it's about violation. Remember, they live in a world that runs alongside our world. It's a parallel world, and it's a world where they have their own rules and their own way of dealing out judgments. And their way of dealing out judgments is that it's to do with revenge. It's to do with, well, you've just violated me, so I need to do something about it. And it's about trying to save face. And they need to keep that self-respect on the street, because it's about respect.
And Decima Francis, I mean, what are your thoughts? Because we seem to have had endless initiatives against knife and gun crime, but here we are seeing the figures get worse.
Well, the figures get worse because collectively, as a society, we are not dealing with the issues of what this is. This is evil. We tend to look at the young people and think that they are evil people, but actually they're young people doing evil things. And we need to look at that. We need to look around why young people feel that they need to waste their lives in that particular way. we understand that there are guns, there are drugs, we understand the criminality, and we understand poverty, and we understand lack, and we understand lack of resources, lack of policing. We have it all in place. Yeah. As to the reasons why these young people are in that state. But we have to ask why they're making this choice. It's a choice that they're making to kill someone else, maim them, or destroy their lives and destroy their own. So my thing is, what about their families? Do they not care about their families and what it does to them? Where is their love for humanity? These are issues we have to look at very, very seriously. Knife crime has been going on all the time. It's not new. Gun crime has tapered down a little bit, and a lot of work was done around that. And I think we lost the impetus, and we didn't carry on the good work that was happening. There were groups around who were doing wonderful things.
Sorry, Decima, just for a second. Colin Sutton, can I bring you in there? You used to be a senior investigating officer for the Met Murder Squad. Why do you think it's getting worse?
I think money is the word, and it's money that's not available to support and do the long-term re-education, but also it's the money that's been removed from policing. The numbers have been removed from policing too. People talk inevitably in this context about stop and search, and the fact is that is the only effective way of enforcing our knife laws. And when people say do fewer stops and less stop and search, what they're actually saying is let's do less enforcement of knife crime.
Sheldon Thomas? That's the only good way of dealing with this, the only effective way?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I do agree with what Colin's saying in terms of what some of the statutory organisations have been going through in terms of cuts. But I think social inequality within society as a whole is a big issue, and family structure, the breakdown of the family structure.
But specifically, what about stop and search, then?
I mean, stop and search is okay, but let's be totally honest. Stop and search, there's no evidence to prove that it actually reduces knife crime. I think the problem we're looking at is what Decima was talking about. We have to understand the families they're coming from. Some of these kids are coming from broken homes. Some of these kids are coming from disturbed backgrounds. And domestic violence is a big, major issue amongst some of these young people. So when you see violence as a young person, you reenact it. But I wouldn't use that as just a simple excuse. I think that we need to look at social inequality, because if a young person cannot see himself in society making it, and he looks out the window and he sees a drug dealer, then he's going to
the problem is a lot of people listen to that, and you've been doing this a long time, they say these are just excuses.
Well, we can say that, but when you're dealing with a child who's 7 years old, who grows up in an environment like that, his mind or her mind becomes conditioned to that environment. So it's not as simple as that we're making up excuses.
I don't think they're excuses, but I think they're long-term issues that need to be dealt with long-term. There is an acute crisis of knives and guns and acid on our streets that needs dealing with here and now. These things aren't exclusive, they're twins, so they can go along in parallel.
Decima Francis, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we need to look at class, and we have to look at how we define knife crime. Knife crime seems only to be labelled as knife crime when it's around black young men. But actually, knife crime happens in all areas, all races, all ages, and to babies as well as old people. So we need to redefine it, because we are labelling people in a particular way. Gangs is a different issue, but a lot of kids carry knives because they're afraid, and we have to look at why they are afraid. Stop and search is great. I know a lot of young people in particular ask for stop and search, but most of the children would not be found with a knife because they will hide it in gardens and so forth. We need to really look at society. If you're going to continue showing murder and violence on TV, full stop, all the games are like that, everything is compounded towards having a more a violent society. As I was talking to a 60-year-old English woman who told me she was shocked at her attitude as how she now responds to everything in a much more violent and defensive way.
Sheldon Thomas, you want to come in there?
20 years ago.
I mean, I just think that for the audience that are watching, people want some solutions. And what Colin's talking about, he's talking about we need an immediate solution, but we also need a long-term solution. Right. But the problem is with immediate solutions are normally knee-jerk reaction rather than real solutions.
It's not a knee-jerk reaction to perform the only effective enforcement method for knife crime and knife laws.
But the Home Office accepted that it was used poorly and actually created tension in communities.
The Home Office and the Mayor of London have both made it their pledge to reduce the full enforcement of knife crime. Because if they say reduce stop and search, they mean reduce enforcement of knife laws.
As Decima said, the point what we have to understand, when you introduce stop and search, regardless of when it comes in or when they want to make it come in, these kids will just hide the knives. We're going to talk about solutions. Solutions are looking at the root causes. Decima talked about anger. Look at the anger and the fear of these young people. It's almost walking together, fear and anger. There's anger amongst some of these young people. There's also fear, and that's why a lot of them carry the knives, fear of not wanting to join the gangs. But the most important thing here is that we cannot keep doing knee-jerk reaction solutions. We have to start looking at long-term solutions.
Sheldon Thomas, Colin Sutton and Decima Francis in Birmingham, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
I've been getting